Seasoned Librarian Podcast. My name is Dean Jones. I'm your host, and today is Season 7, Episode 13. Today I'm talking to food writer, author Kathryn Pauline, who is also a photographer and a recipe developer behind the Saveur award-winning food blog, Cardamom and Tea, where she creates signature dishes inspired by her Middle Eastern American background and seasonal ingredients. Her debut cookbook, A Dish for All Seasons, is forthcoming in 2022 with Chronicle Books. She grew up in Chicago and lives in Melbourne. I think you're really going to like this interview. I had a really great time talking to Kathryn, and I really enjoy her website, her blog, and I'm looking forward to reading her cookbook when it comes out in the fall. Her recipes are really inventive and fun and imaginative and just great. Her descriptions in her food writing are really not only succinct, but give really good directions that are very personal. I really recommend you read her blog, and you can go to the link in the bio and get her cookbook by pre-ordering it. I really anticipate personally that this is going to be a bestseller, so you may want to do that now. Without further ado, I'm going to my interview with Kathryn Pauline.
Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm Dean Jones, your host. Today, I am very lucky to have all the way from down under, Kathryn Pauline, a recipe developer and photographer who is at Cardamom and Tea, and a blog, and author of the soon-to-be released A Dish for All Seasons. Kathryn, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Dean. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, for our audience members who may not be familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a recipe developer, food photographer, and as you said, soon-to-be cookbook author, or soon-to-be published cookbook author, which I'm super excited about. And yeah, I just love sharing recipes with people, developing unique recipes, and yeah, that's what I do.
What inspired you to begin your Saveur award-winning food blog, Cardamom and Tea?
So I was studying medieval poetry in a PhD program at Rutgers, and I was just kind of coming to terms with the fact that it was really not the right fit for me. I really enjoyed my time there, and I loved a lot of what I was working on, and loved teaching, really loved teaching. But yeah, I was just kind of like looking for something to do that could be kind of a creative outlet, involving like some of my interests like food and writing and photography. And I think more than anything, I really wanted to do something that was different from what I was doing for work. And then it just kind of, I don't know if it was slowly or quickly, kind of depends on your perspective, but either slowly or quickly kind of morphed into a full-time thing. So I left academia and decided to try to pursue some work in the food world and a cookbook deal. Yeah, so that's where that kind of came from.
Now, where did your interest in food start? I know that a lot of the people that I interview, we talk about maybe cooking with a grandparent or a parent, or just cooking on their own early on. Where did you begin your interest with food?
Yeah, so I think the interest definitely started in childhood. And so the kind of two different avenues. So one was the food that I grew up with like my grandmother and my mom cooking like really wonderful Syrian American food. And I remember like my grandmother teaching me how to make baklava when I was like really little, because I like asked her to. But then also just like poring over my mom's cookbook collection. She had like Cooks Illustrated, like a lot of Cooks Illustrated cookbooks. And I just remember, I know it was so good, especially the ones from like when I was growing up, like in the 90s, that was just such a like the Cooks Illustrated era. So I just remember looking through all of those, like the magazines and the cookbooks. And she was like both of my parents gave all of us like a lot of independence. And just kind of like, we just sort of did whatever we wanted in terms of, it wasn't sort of like my mom with me in the kitchen being like, okay, now measure the flour and sift it and make sure. It was very just kind of like, oh yeah, like you want to make a souffle, like here's a cookbook, go have fun, which I loved. And I don't know, I just have so many good memories of like cooking food from Cooks Illustrated cookbooks for my family and like everybody trying it. And Yeah, it was so much fun. Souffles and fettuccine Alfredo were my two like favorite things when I was 11 to make.
Oh my God, that's wonderful. I love that. Were there any food memories from your childhood that you have that you cherish?
Yeah. Okay. So the most kind of vivid food memory, this is so simple and totally like just the first thing that popped into my head. When I was little, my grandmother used to like take cucumbers, like kind of the smaller like Persian cucumbers, carve
Yeah.
them out, and then sprinkle the inside with like salt, and then fill them up with water as like this little like glass, like cucumber glass of water. And I just remember like playing in their backyard when I was really little, and then coming inside and getting these like cucumber water snacks. And it's just like such a summer memory that I don't know, it's like so simple and has kind of like, I don't know, it just has a lot of fond memory for me.
That's beautiful. I love that. Now, you're from Chicago, but you're currently living in Melbourne, Australia. Did you experience any culture shock when you moved to Australia about, regarding food, and what's different about living there in general?
Yeah, it's funny. So we had like chatted over email the other day, and you had asked me or like mentioned that you're going to ask, that you were curious about this question. And so I'd been like thinking about it and I couldn't really think of anything. But then today I was literally like trying to grocery shop for a recipe that I'm developing that involves like a cut of beef. And it reminded me that I'm still totally in culture shock over the British/Australian way of like butchering meat and the names that they use for all the different cuts, which are super different from the American cuts. And yeah, like the produce names are all a little bit different. And that was really easy to adjust to, but I think it's like that literally the cow is butchered differently. So it's like really hard to tell like, oh wait, so what's sirloin? What is porterhouse? Is that the same thing? So I'm still kind of adjusting to that and like learning.
I was watching Iron Chef last night, and I think one of the first episodes featured an Australian chef, and he was talking about cuts of meat. And I guess they were saying, well, he has an advantage because lamb is big in Australia. So,
Oh my God, the lamb here is so amazing. I was never like a real lamb person. And I'm not a vegetarian by any means, but I do eat like, I eat mostly vegetarian, kind of like 85%, I would say. But oh my gosh, yeah, the lamb here is incredible. It's really good.
people always talk about Vegemite first thing when they talk about Australian food, which I think is kind of, everybody reduces a culture's food to some Cliff Notes thing, which is irritating. But have you tried Vegemite? Do you like it?
Yeah, I have. I actually have Australian cousins here, and so their family like immigrated here while my family was immigrating to the U.S. So I've like got to know them. They gave me like the sweetest Australian welcome basket when I first got here, Sonia and Ninway. And I mean, I have like a bunch of cousins. They're all really wonderful. But they like introduced me to Vegemite, those two specifically. And they gave me really specific instructions, which is like, do not use a big swipe of it. So like Tom Hanks recently, when he was in Australia, got in trouble for like, did you see that on his Instagram? Yeah, where he had like that big glob of Vegemite on his toast. And he was like, yeah. It's like, Tom Hanks, you didn't really end up eating that. Come on, because that would have like even killed like an Australian person from just like one bite of it. But yeah, it's just like the tiniest little swipe. And I think if you like a lot of like kind of umami flavor, it's really lovely in that way.
I like
in kind of moderation.
I like Marmite, which is similar.
Oh,
I always
yeah,
tell the
totally.
people that want to try it, a little dab will do ya. That's all you need.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah, so I'm like, I don't love umami flavor. So like, to be totally honest, Vegemite's not my favorite in the world, but I do appreciate it, if that makes sense.
Now, your bio says Middle Eastern cooking inspires you, which I've seen in your recipes, but I also see a lot of influence from the United States, general regions here. And I guess being in Chicago, you're kind of in the middle of the country, so you probably get a lot of influence from different things. I see a lot of great fusion, like cornbread studded with jalapenos, Sitar chicken with waffles, Persian love Pop-Tarts, green goddess salad with tahini and apricots. Could you call your cooking a kind of fusion food, do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I've never like really used the word fusion to describe it, but I think that's fair. I think the thing that sort of inspires a lot of the recipes that I make is like the two concepts that are always kind of in the back of my mind are like meaningful and delicious, because I think there's so much meaning in food and so much memory, and different foods kind of like vary in meaning to like different people. Yeah, and I don't know, I think like I try to just make sure that those two sort of components are always present.
I really like your food writing, and you seem to want to bring a
Thanks.
lot of playfulness to your cooking and kind of fun. But also it seems to be written by somebody who likes food. I mean, you really seem to like have really informed ways of flavor. I really like though your descriptions and how you describe things. I was reading an article, a recipe where you were making spanakopita,
Mhm.
and you really had really good descriptions on how to work with the phyllo dough, which if anybody's worked
Oh,
with it
thanks.
before, it's not something you could just do. You got to like really have some like experience working with it a little bit. Did you
Mhm.
craft your writing on this way on purpose? Were you like, how did you craft your writing for your recipes?
Yeah, so it's funny, like I feel like that sort of thing develops over time so slowly. And I don't even know if I feel like I haven't spent enough time sort of thinking about how intentional I've been in like developing like a writing voice. So it's such a great question. I mean, I just remember like the first time I ever wrote a recipe was, you know, those like email chain forward things where someone is
Yeah.
like, yeah, like send this to 10 people and then they'll reply to the person before and like send them a recipe. And I remember like maybe about 8 years ago or something, getting one from a friend. And I had like this granola bar that I always made that was like my own recipe. And so I just remember like sitting down to actually like write it up for this email chain and like having to think through every single step and like think through, oh, like I should tell the person to preheat the oven in the beginning. Like I totally forgot to do that. I don't know. And just kind of, I remember it literally took me like I want to say like 3 hours or something just to like write down what I did for the granola bars. And like how much I feel like it has become so much easier over the last few years doing it, you know, every single day. And then like testing those recipes. But yeah, I think my main goal is always just to tell people like everything they need to know and to try to not include anything that they don't. So like if there's a technique that I include in the recipe to make sure that it's something that actually like will help people make, you know, have better success with it, and you know, kind of getting rid of any extra steps or extra information that people don't totally need. Yeah, and kind of making it conversational. And like it's so hard to strike that balance though. I feel like I usually give too much information, but I
No,
try to
not at
get
all.
this
No,
amount.
you do it just right.
Oh,
Now,
thanks.
you're a Saveur award-winning blogger, and that's a pretty big deal. How did you feel when you got that award?
Thanks. Yeah, it was I was honestly just kind of really surprised that I got it because I had only been blogging for a couple, I mean like a few, maybe like 4 or 5 months at that point. Um, I am not really the kind of person who seeks outward validation very often. And
Mhm.
so it was kind of an unusual moment for me because I was thinking about leaving, like, you know, leaving grad school and to do something else and like to pursue this full time. And it was kind of that little extra shove that I needed to be like, oh, like this actually might work out. Like maybe I should give this a try, really in earnest. And so I think at that moment, I really did need a little bit of that extra validation to be like, I think maybe like this, I mean, who knows? I feel like you never actually know that it's worked out until you're like on your fifth cookbook or something. But I'm really proud of what I've done so far, and I'm glad that it gave me that little extra shove.
Do you get feedback from your readers?
Yeah, yeah, it's always like really helpful hearing from people about like how a recipe went, and like usually really positively. But I've totally had comments from people like, oh, like, I think like there's this, this problem in this recipe, like, what do you think? And kind of like troubleshooting together. Or even like, it's super helpful hearing from people who are like, I can't find this ingredient, or I'm having trouble with this, and kind of trying to find a way to make recipes work for more people. Yeah, I love getting feedback.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. Now, you have a book coming out this year in the fall, A Dish for All Seasons.
Yeah.
So where did you start with the cookbook? Did you just kind of jump off your writing with the blog, or had you always planned on writing a cookbook?
Yeah, so I always wanted to write a cookbook. That was always sort of my where I wanted to end up. And I love blogging just, in and of itself, but definitely wanted to write a cookbook eventually. It's funny, it was a really long journey with a lot of side roads. Way back when I first started blogging, I was like, okay, I've won a Saveur award, like maybe this is the time. And I remember like doing a sort of like writer's retreat at home when my husband was out of town one weekend, and just being like, I'm gonna get this proposal done. And writing like the world's worst cookbook proposal, because I had literally no ideas. And I was just like, just sitting at home while my husband was like in Italy. I like thought about joining him, but I was like, no, I'm gonna like get this done. And yeah, it totally sucked. But there was like this tiny gem of like tiny grain, I guess, like a kernel of an idea really deeply embedded in that proposal, that ended up becoming A Dish for All Seasons like 3 years later. And then in the meantime, I went to work for a restaurant for a little bit, and took like some time off, because I was like, I don't think this cookbook thing is working out right now. And then after a while, I ended up kind of finding my way back to it. I found a really wonderful agent, and my agent Adriana and I worked together to write what was my second proposal, my first one with her, which was about a Middle Eastern cookbook. And it ended up completely like not going anywhere. It was a great proposal. I was super proud of it. We were both super proud of it, but it didn't end up landing anywhere. So then we're back to the drawing board. So we went for my third proposal, which was A Dish for All Seasons, kind of scrambled at the last minute and found this like kernel of an idea from the first proposal. Ended up coming up with something I was super proud of, and that is how that came to be.
Now you've written over, I think what is it, 140 recipes for the cookbook?
Yeah, I don't know what it came out to exactly. It's like 100 really substantial ones, and then like 25 kind of build your own recipe versions of those. And then there were like a bunch of extra bonus ones like pestos and jams and like kind of little things in addition.
Now, so food writing is very technical writing.
It is.
What was this process like for you? Because I'm looking at that and I'm thinking of how much writing that is and how many rewrites you probably had to do. Were you like in a fetal position at some point crying?
I mean, I think we were all in a fetal position crying that year because it was 2020. So
oh yeah.
I was, yeah, totally. It was such a weird process to write the first book. For me, it was like the thing that got me through the pandemic, and like the security blanket that I just like clung to. And I think we all sort of had our ways of like kind of coping and getting through it. And for me, it was just to really throw myself into my work, which I don't know. I mean, I think that's, I don't know how I feel about that, but it got me through the pandemic. And yeah, it's a weird experience, like writing a cookbook during a pandemic, because it was really just like me and my husband trying everything, and enjoying like the fruits of recipe testing and photography. And then I'm actually currently writing my my second book right now.
No way.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I actually just finished writing it, I'm photographing it right now. And so it's been so different because I was writing that one during like our first trip back to the US after like not seeing family in 3 years. So I was testing all these recipes like in, families' kitchens. And people were like getting to try all the food I was making. And it was like so exciting to actually get to share it with more people. Yeah. And I mean, it's so funny because like, I feel like whenever you're working on a big project, it just becomes such a way of like coloring that year. And so I feel like, I think when people pick up this book, they won't associate it with the pandemic, but like for me, I'll always think of it as like this book that kind of, I don't know, this like rainbow that sort of came out of this difficult time in all of our lives.
Now your blog has a lot of your photography in it, and it's got a kind of artistic feel to it that you can see, and you get kind of becomes very familiar as you go through the recipes. When you went to write your cookbook, and knowing that you're probably going to want to do your food photography and stuff, was there some concern that they may have a different vision for what they want to do with the book? Did you have any kind of struggles with the publisher or worry about that as an issue when having your vision kind of come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, it was my first cookbook that I had ever written, and the first time I had ever, like worked with a publisher to do that. And so at the beginning, I just didn't really know what to expect. But I think it ended up going so well. And I'm working with Chronicle again on book number 2. They were just like really good about being collaborative and sort of like having conversations early on. The designer, Lizzie, who I worked with, who designed the whole cookbook, she did an amazing job. And it was just like, I don't know, I think it was really wonderful kind of getting to come up with the vision together. Because I don't know, I didn't know what to expect, so I didn't really have any expectations going in. And it went great.
Now, I wanted to ask you next, this is kind of an unfair question, so I'm just going to throw out there. What are some of the recipes in this cookbook that you're most proud of?
Yeah, no, I love that question. Because like, of course, I'm proud of all of them, as you're kind of implying, but for sure, like some of the ones that I've been going back to in the last like year or two since I finished recipe developing, the garden salads are all really good. And I think that section is really versatile because like the whole idea of the cookbook is to help people, like that kind of chef thing where chefs are like, oh, like I just go to the market and I see what inspires me. And then I like go home and I make this beautiful dinner. And it's like, oh, okay, you make it sound kind of easy. It's to kind of inspire people to develop a repertoire of really, adaptable kind of standard things that you can mix up and use like a lot of different produce. So you really can just like go to the market, see what inspires you, and then do that like whole inspired chef thing. So the garden salads are so much fun for that because it's like pretty much all produce, and you can just, go to the market, see what inspires you, make an amazing dressing. And there are lots of like fun ideas for, kind of like doing different interesting combinations of things. The fall one is maybe my favorite thing in the entire book. I've made it literally, I think probably 15 times since I like finished working on it. It's this chestnut roasted grape salad that's like with a kale base, and it has this like very garlicky kind of like creamy dressing. And you can sort of like choose your own adventure and get a packet of chestnuts, or you can like roast them, but it's so good in the fall. And if you have packets of chestnuts, it's also good any time of year. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That sounds gorgeous. I got to try that. I love chestnuts, and I always like being able to, although I do admit to getting the ones in the packets myself.
Oh, I mean, do it. Yeah, they're so easy and so good.
So yeah. I want to ask you, and I like to ask this question to everybody because I just love to see the answers that I get. So who are some of the other food writers that have inspired you that you love to read?
Yeah, I love any food writers that like encourage improvisation, and any food writers that, just like encourage improvisation and flexibility. So some of my favorites are Peter Reinhardt, who has that really amazing bread book, The Bread Baker's Apprentice, Samin Nosrat, obviously, Nick Sharma, and Julia Turshen.
Those are all wonderful.
Yeah. And they're so, I feel like they're all very improvisational and like encourage people to be more improvisational.
And I wanted to ask you, what are you making for dinner tonight yourself, if applicable?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm photographing the dessert section for my second book right now. And we're definitely having takeout because I am like up to my eyeballs in like cakes and scones and like all of those things. Yeah. So we're going to get some takeout tonight.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a bonus question too, because I've talked to so many people on the program that are themselves food photographers. And how did you start? Did you do it from necessity because you needed to take the food photography for the blog, or is it something you like doing anyway? Because I know it's not something that everybody can do well, and you do it very well. I know that my pictures on Instagram always seem to be the same kind of beigeish ochre color for some reason.
That's okay. That could be like a signature style. I got into I feel like that was definitely something in the beginning that I was most excited about because I had taken some photography classes in like high school and in college. And so I knew how to use an SLR and like knew composition and lighting a bit, but it was definitely like a really steep learning curve still. And so I'm like the kind of person who really enjoys like challenges and doesn't super enjoy like mastery. And so I really like the feeling of like not quite knowing how to do something and having to figure it out. So I really enjoyed the photography in the beginning. At this point, it's a little bit more necessity. Not that I don't enjoy it, but I think the more exciting creative part for me is like in the recipe developing, where I feel like there's always an exciting new challenge. Not that I've mastered photography, but just that I kind of feel like I've reached my own personal sort of like, I don't know, like I feel like I've kind of reached a plateau and I'm like comfortable and I can do the thing I need to do. And for some reason, I've just like settled there, and that's okay.
Now, Chicago is a foodie heaven, and there's all kinds of food in Chicago. Is there anything you specifically miss from your hometown?
Yeah, I think Chicago has really, really unique Mexican food and just like 1,000 amazing taquerias. And I think that's something I really miss, especially being in Australia. It feels very far away. And then also obviously deep dish pizza, which I think people who are from outside of Chicago, probably it's like Vegemite to them, but I don't know. Yeah, I love deep dish pizza.
I love it. I don't know how anybody could not like it.
Oh, okay,
it's
good.
all good.
Yeah.
I know people get picky about pizza, but I mean, I like it all, so.
Me too. Yeah.
Well, Kathryn, I want to thank you for being on the program. I've really loved getting a chance to talk to you, and I can't wait to get my hands on your book this fall. And I'm going to encourage everybody else to look for the link. I'm going to put a link for it in the bio. And is it available for pre-order now?
It is. It's available for pre-order. There's a link on my website to like a bunch of different shops you can buy it from and retailers. Thank you so much for mentioning that. That's so kind. Yeah, I'm so excited about it.
No, it's going to be popular, folks. I'm telling you, pre-order it now. Or you're going to have to wait for the reprint.
Kathryn, thanks so much, Dean.
Thank you for being on the program. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
That was my conversation with Kathryn Pauline. Her upcoming book, Cardamom and Tea, A Dish for All Seasons, is coming out in the fall and is available from pre-order on Amazon with the link you can go to in the bio. On Monday, we're going to have British food writer and award-winning author Angela Clutton on the program. She has a book out called The Vinegar Cupboard that we're going to talk about, and as well as her award-winning radio shows and podcasts. We'll talk to her on Monday. This episode is sponsored by the Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and human culture and history. To learn more about this organization, you can go to their website at ccnorcal.org. If you follow my podcast and enjoy it, you can go to the link in the bio and buy me a cup of coffee or a pint, or just leave some feedback. You can help us promote this podcast and share the episode with a friend. You can share us on social media, on Twitter, on the tag @Well Librarian. And you can also share the website. You could share the podcast info with friends on social media as well. Follow the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast on Spotify or iTunes and get notified whenever new episodes are released. You can subscribe to our podcast newsletter and get updates of my articles and more at wellseasonedlibrariansubstack.com. And I also like to mention that our theme song, Talk About Love, by the wonderful band Kitty Cat Fan Club, was given permission to use the song by their label Asian Man Records. You can go and find out more about this band, order their albums, buy merchandise with their logo on it, or find lots of other really great bands on the website for asianmanrecords.com. Thank you all for listening to my podcast today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and keep cooking some really great food and enjoying life with your loved ones. Take care, everybody.
I've been getting better, better than you'll know. Take a little time for it to show. You make my life seem settled, settling for more. Take a little time for love to grow. Will you break my heart with so much pleasure? Will you talk around for all to hear? When you talk about love, I've been getting better, better than you'll know. Take a little time for it to show. You